let's talk about my favorite book choices for all of the different grade levels. Hi, and welcome to the Homeschool Show and Tell. This is being hosted by Jessica at the Waldock Way and Abby from Rooted at Rest. You can find the entire playlist linked in the description below, where everyone is sharing their book recommendations and favorites this month. You can get an actual printable of my favorite books over on my website. It's linked below, and you can grab that so you can take it to the library. But today I would like to highlight about 5 titles from each of the various grade levels, and I'm going to throw in some bonus graphic novels that aren't on the printable list. So you'll want to tune in and you can add them to the list before you head to the library. All right, let's start with the earliest elementary school level, kindergarten through 2nd grade. Some of my favorite read-alouds from this year. Whew, I had to think back, but that means you know they're the good ones because they're the ones that stand out in my mind, even though my youngest child is now 14 and my oldest is 21. One of the stories that we came across early on in our homeschooling years was the series Toys Go Out. This is the first one in the series, and it is about a stuffed water buffalo, Lumpy, a stuffed stingray, and the ball, Plastic. And the story is told from their point of view. There are 6 adventures in here that kind of intertwine as well, from the silly to the serious. We laughed quite a bit while reading this series. All right, another one. I actually don't have memories of reading my own children because I never got to. This is a book I came across because of the book clubs that I teach online throughout school. And I read this one with my students, and I thought it was such a sweet story that I wish I had been able to read it aloud to my younger elementary students. This is the story of Mona the mouse, and she has lost her home. And she finds a hotel in the forest that is safe and comfortable for all animals that are welcome there. She finds a job there, but the question is, can she find her true home? Very delightful story. All right, the next one is one that I read with my children. My oldest was, I think, in kindergarten or 1st grade when we came across My Father's Dragon, which is a Newbery Honor book. And you're going to want to just get all 3 in this series. It's a very short book, but this book, we actually got a copy that had all 3 of the books in it, so you could look for that. But you're going to follow Elmer to the island where he is trying to rescue a dragon, and he is going to meet some very fun animals along the way and solve some tricky problems in very creative ways. This is a fun one. Definitely make sure you get the next ones, Elmer and the Dragon and the Dragons of Blue Land. All right, next we have a beginning reader series that my children adored when they were younger, and that is Mr. Putter and Tabby Pour the Tea. This is such a sweet series about Mr. Putter, an older man, and his cat who keeps him company. We loved these. They are simple. I used to read them out loud to my kids, but once you have readers in the house, they can also read these on their own. And this was one of their favorite beginning reader series. All right, and one of my final choices for this age group is Trumpet of the Swan. I don't have a copy on me, but this was such a surprising book. I had never read it until I read it out loud to my kids, and we all loved it. It's about a trumpeter swan who cannot make the trumpet sound. So he has to be very ingenious and solve his problem in creative ways. It was a really sweet story. It surprised me. I remember reading it out loud with my kids and just being delighted by that book. All right, now a few bonus graphic novels for this age group that aren't in the printable. A really fun one, Bird and Squirrel. And yes, on these graphic novels, you're going to see a bunch of Post-it notes because I teach a weekly graphic novel class online, and I have my notes in these books from teaching them. This is just a really fun one. There's a lot of puns in this one, and the characters and the illustrations are just delightful. Narwhal, Unicorn of the Sea. I have the first two in the series here, Super Narwhal and Jelly Jolt. These books are very sweet about sea animals and friendship, and your little one is sure to love them. The next one I discovered about a year ago, and that is PB&J, which is already funny because PB&J the sandwich, but this is about an actual P, a bee, and then a blue jay, and their friendship and all of their fun adventures. And finally, for the kindergarten through second grade, we have the book Monster Friends. This is a really fun one. It looks really thick, but it is full of pictures and images, and it is not overdone on the dialogue or words. So it is perfect for the K-2 crowd for a longer book, a graphic novel that they might enjoy about these two neighbors who are unlikely friends because they are very different. Let's move on to 3rd to 5th grade. So we're looking at longer chapter books for this age group. And I think this stack of books could be read aloud, or you could give them to your child to enjoy on their own. Let's start off with the Newbery Honor Book, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. I got to read this with my kids and with the students that I teach online on OutSchool. This was one of our book club titles. And it is such a surprising and delightful tale. The way that the tales of the mountain, of the old man and the moon, are woven in to the adventures that Min Lee is having was so creative and fun, and an extremely well done story. Definitely think your kids will enjoy that one. All right, this one, Frindle, is kind of a classic, and all of my kids read it before I read this one, and they all loved it. So I actually picked it to read with my book club last year in September, and it was a great read. It's short, it's sweet, it's a school story, so it was really fun to do in September with my students, and it's really creative, and I love the ending. Another great read. Okay. This one I discovered when I was teaching 5th grade, before I was even homeschooling. And I have now read it out loud to my own children, and I have used it for my online book clubs, for Book and Movie Club, because there is a movie version of this one. Holes is such a creative tale. So you're going to join the boys at Camp Green Lake. Stanley Yelnats has been sent there because of his bad luck, and they have to dig a hole every day. But there is definitely more to this detention center than meets the eye. And Stanley is going to go on an adventure, and stories from the past are going to intersect with stories of the present, and it's done very creatively. This one is also a Newbery winner, so always fun to see what we think might be the reason that that book was chosen as the one book in all of children's literature to receive that award. All right. Our family loved the book Poppy so much, and there's a whole series, that we have an ornament on our Christmas tree to represent our reading adventures the year that our family read Poppy together. Poppy is a very sweet little mouse, and she is about to go on a hero's journey. And this was actually the first book I read when I was introduced to the hero's journey by a friend. Love the characters, love the animals, and love Poppy. Now, if you look this up, this was the first book written, but then a prequel was written called Ragweed. I highly recommend you start with Poppy, because something happens to Ragweed right away in the first chapter. And if you've fallen in love with him from the prequel, it makes it that much harder. But if you started with this book, you're not quite as attached to Ragweed as a character when it happens. So it's better to then go back and read his story. All right, but this was a family favorite. And finally, one that so many of you probably know, but that is the book Wonder. This might be a little bit on the older, the 5th graders in this age group, but this story is such a good one about accepting people who are different, and a great book to start discussing the intricacies of friendship and people who might look or act different than us with your older children. So this is another favorite for that 3rd to 5th grade age range. All right. Now a few bonus graphic novels that aren't in, some might be in the printable, but let's look at a few of them. It was very hard for me to narrow down graphic novels for this age group because honestly, I teach a weekly graphic novel class online, so I have read a different graphic novel, like 26 different graphic novels every week for over 2 years now. So I know a lot of graphic novels, and this 3rd to 5th grade age range has so many good ones. But I'm going to go with Measuring Up. I thought this was a very creative way to bring in her Taiwanese background and her love of cooking, and creatively kind of combine them into this story with a little bit of Julia Child and all kinds of great ingredients for a fantastic graphic novel. Another favorite that is also a Newbery honor book is El Defo. This is a memoir, and it is the true experience of Cece Bell, who wrote the book, growing up as a child who was deaf. She lost her hearing later. She was a few years old when she contracted meningitis and began to lose her hearing. And it's about some of the difficulties and experiences she had through that. Fantastic book. All right, another one will get your child started on a series of books that they will love, and that is Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales. This is the first one, One Dead Spy. I recommend starting with this one, though you don't have to, because you're going to meet the narrators. So while Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales are basically nonfiction graphic novels, they are history stories told in truth. They are not historical fiction, except for your narrators. They add a little bit of humor and silliness to the book, but you meet them in this first book. So you can start anywhere on the Hazardous Tales, but if you want to get to know the background of these narrators and why they appear in the stories, start with One Dead Spy, which is the story of the actual historical Nathan Hale. All right. Another graphic novel that is fantastic for this age group is When Stars Are Scattered. This is the true story, so a memoir, again, of a boy who was on growing up in a refugee camp. And it's his story, and it does have a happy ending, and it includes photos and things like that that just bring the story to life and the reality of what it's like to grow up and spend years on a refugee camp. All right, and finally, we have a sci-fi fun, Zeta the Space Girl. Absolutely love this one. Such fun adventure, such creative and silly characters. This is a fantastic book by Ben Hackey to grab for your collection if you haven't read it. All right, let's talk about my favorites for middle school. Now, this can be an awkward age because our kids are ready for more, but we have to still usually be cautious about content. So I'll try to give you some warnings if there are any in these books, especially because there is a big difference between a 6th grader and an 8th grader and what they might enjoy or be ready for. So I'm going to start with a book that might be difficult for some of your more sensitive readers. I read this out loud with my kids when they were in middle school and some were in elementary school. And I think you can get away with that when you're reading out loud, because you can discuss things that come up as a family. You can kind of take a break. You can kind of get a read on your child. But Refugee follows 3 different refugee children from different time periods. So one from Nazi Germany in the 30s. Excuse me. A girl from Cuba in the 90s, and then a Syrian boy from 2015. And their stories have a connection, but you won't find that out until the end. This was a fantastic story. As an adult, I absolutely loved it, and it got us started on this author. My middle school son then binged all of the rest of his historical fiction books. So definitely look up Alan Gratz if you haven't come across him, if you have a middle schooler who might be ready for this kind of historical content. All right, let's go to something a little lighter. Well, actually not completely. This one has a warning also. So the crossover is both a Newbery Medal book and a Coretta Scott King Award winner. The thing I love about this book is that it's written in free verse poetry. And you'll find as you're going through some of these pages, it's written a little bit in like a style of slam poetry. So there'll be all kinds of fun ways that the font and the words are played with. It is the story of twin boys, their family, their love for basketball, their relationships in middle school as things are changing. Girls are coming into the picture. But there is a parent who dies. So there is some sadness in this book as well. But it is truly a wonderful book. I read it out loud to my kids. I have a feeling if there's an audio, it would be fantastic. Love this book for middle school. Okay, let's go to one that I don't have to really give any warnings. A science fiction, Lion of Mars, another winner in my book, literally. This one is about a colony that has been started on Mars, and all of the countries, there are 5 countries represented there from Earth, who have set up colonies that have always communicated and cooperated. But something has happened, and the United States colony is no longer acting as part of the community. They are standing alone and separate. And the kids begin to get curious. So, because of some calamity that occurs, they're going to have to reach out, and it's just a wonderful book to discuss community and differences and communication and all of those things. And it's lots of fun. I did this one in my book clubs online, and it was a hit. All right, let's go to another historical fiction. I literally just read this one with my middle school online, and I have to say that 95% of the kids gave this a thumbs up or double thumbs up. They can rank it, anything from thumbs up to thumbs down. 95% are giving this one like a 9 or 10 out of 10. I only had one person in all 80 of the students not like this one. It's fast-paced, it's suspenseful, it's historically accurate. This is at the time, the night the Berlin Wall goes up. And the main character, Gerda, and her family are separated in East Berlin and West Berlin. And it is a very suspenseful book about them trying to reunite. I don't want to give too much away. What I loved about this one is that even the students in my class who don't normally like historical fiction loved this one. And I think it's because of all the suspense and the action and that kind of thing. All right. The final one is a classic read in 8th grade, but it can be tricky and difficult for sensitive kids. You can see that my kids have read this and marked it up quite a bit. This is how they do their annotations. The Giver, a classic dystopic book where everything seems perfect, but not everything is what it seems. And our main character is going to discover that. So this one does have a caution. There is a time where they are not allowed to have twins. And so they give one of the twins a shot to kill them immediately if twins are born. So that can be a jarring moment in the book if your child is not ready for that. But like all dystopic literature, there are going to be jarring things because that is the whole point. But if you have a 8th grader or a 7th grader who's ready for it, this is a great introduction to the world of dystopia and one of my favorites. And I thought the movie was pretty well done. And this one also is a Newbery winner. Let's look at some graphic novels for this age group. This was one of my finds this past summer. Yes, again, all marked up because I used it in my book clubs this year. Speak Up is about a girl with autism. And so she has her persona that everyone knows, but she has created a YouTube channel. And no one knows the identity of this star that they all love on YouTube. So it's all about learning to be confident in who you are, which is such a great conversation for middle school students. Loved this one. All right, another popular one in my middle school graphic novel club this year was Freestyle. This one combines some unique interests like yo-yoing and street dancing. It was lots of fun, lots of unique friendships, and the main character is kind of trying to balance being between kind of two groups, which I think is another great conversation to have in this age range. All right, this one is a series, Explorer, And I just think these are really creative. So what it is it's
I'm
a
not
prompt.
sure I understand.
Okay, I'm going to do this section again. All right, the Explorer series is very creative. What it is that the author gave several graphic novel artists the prompt mystery boxes, and they each write their own story. So basically, you have 6 or 7 short stories in here. You can see as I'm flipping, they're all very different. So it's kind of a fun way to talk to your kids about like a writing prompt and how everyone envisioned it differently. There are 3 of these in the Explorer series, and each one is a different prompt. So it's really fun to look at these because each story has a different mood, a different tone to it in the book. I think it's really creative. Okay, this next one was a find this year, and that is Hoops. This is a historical fiction based on a girls' basketball team that has to fight for equality in their high school. And I really enjoyed this story. It's a great one to be reading at this age. It's simple. You could read this with a 3rd to 5th grader. They could easily read it. But I feel like it's a topic that becomes something middle school students are hearing more about, equal rights between men and women. And this is a great one looking at the issue of sports, I believe in the 70s in the US. So it's not that long ago. Really enjoyed this story. All right, and the final one is a little dark. A parent dies right at the beginning of this one, but then we head into this fantasy world trying to save the girl's mom. And I don't want to give too much away, but this is a really fun fantasy adventure. But again, it's a little bit on the darker side, but there are 11 books in this series. So once you get started, if you enjoy it, you will be hooked all the way to the end. Now we are at the high school level. Some of my favorite books that we have read at this level. Let's go. The first one I don't actually own. We listened to the audiobook, and that is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. And I need to give you a heads up. If you listen to the original, read by Trevor Noah himself, which I loved, it does have a lot of language in it, one chapter in particular. And while I was comfortable letting my high schoolers listen to the original, there is a classroom edition of the book. So it's not the audio, but it eliminates the language. And you can still enjoy the story of his childhood growing up in South Africa during apartheid. That is why he was literally born a crime, because his mom was black and his dad was white. It was a fascinating story. We laughed until we cried. We still talk about this one. It's one of my favorite books that I listened with high schoolers and middle schoolers in the car on one of our vacations. All right, let's continue on. Yes, we love dystopic literature in this house. This has been a favorite for all of my high schoolers, and we enjoy the movie versions and everything about the Hunger Games. Again, it is dystopic. There is violence, and in this particular story, there is violence, children to children. There are 12 districts set up in this new country of Pan Am, and they each have to send a child to battle to the death in the Hunger Games. We loved the characters, the stories, the romance. It's got it all. And it's just a really fun series to have your high schooler start on. And there was recently a movie of the prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Again, it's a prequel, so I would read The Hunger Games, Catching Fire and Mockingjay first, and then go back to The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And that movie was just released in 2023. All right, another one. Get your kids started on some classic mysteries by the queen of mystery writing, Agatha Christie. And Then There Were None is just one of those classic high school books. My son loved this, and it started him on a love of Agatha Christie and wanting to read all of her books. So it's a great mystery with a twist at the end that people don't always see coming. So it's a fun one for high school. Again, murder mystery, so content. All right, another one, a science fiction that we all loved. I read this one out loud to my children, and we were all captivated. Now this, again, this is the classroom edition. The Martian has a lot of language in it. The F word is in there quite a bit. Now, in my house with high schoolers, we talk about the language. And that, well, there might be reasons someone is using that word. So if you have been stranded on Mars and your entire team took off because they think you're dead, well, that might be cause for an F-bomb, but we're not going to repeat it. Anyway, you can get the classroom edition that eliminates all of that and you can still enjoy the story. Or if it doesn't matter to you in your household, you can get the adult version. Same story, but with a lot more cursing. All right, and finally, one of the books all of my high schoolers read is The Outsiders. This is just such a great book that takes you back to a time period that they are not as familiar with, a look at cliques and social groups in a school, and you can follow it up with a movie with Patrick Swayze and Ralph Macchio and introduce them to some of the heartthrobs of the past. But this is another one that we still quote, and now all my kids understand why we say stay gold, pony boy. They usually read this in 9th or 10th grade, and it seems to work for that. But there is violence also in this book. All right, so there are some of my favorites for high school. Let's look at graphic novels. I don't have as many, but I do have some to show you here. One's not a graphic novel, but it's just a unique series. All right, Nimona. We love this one, and Netflix released a movie that is fantastic. It is a unsuspecting hero, maybe even anti-hero a little bit, story. So we have two former best friends who are now sworn enemies, and we have a shape-shifting hero who is not who she seems to be. This one has some more maybe high school jokes in it, like his name is Golden Loin, that kind of stuff. Nothing over the top. My kids read this in middle school, but I'm going to go ahead and make it a high school recommendation. Very fun series, very popular one as well. And love the graphics in this one too. The color symbolism on point. All right, I want to make sure you all know about this series, Classical Comics, because you can get a lot of different classics in a graphic novel format. So this is A Christmas Carol. It is fantastically done, and you can get it. This is the original text version. So it uses the original text in the graphic novel. Not the complete story, of course, but the words that are used are from the original text. You can also get different versions of the text. All right, and finally, a graphic novel for high school, a biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was a pastor in Germany who did not feel like the church was doing enough to fight Adolf Hitler. Now, I will warn you, your high schooler will be fine, but when I read this, the font is really tiny. So if you're reading as an adult, break out the reading glasses. But this was just a fantastic graphic novel. My parents were visiting and I suggested that they read it as well. Full of great information, historical. I think your high schooler would really enjoy this one. Yes, he was a pastor, so his religion is part of the story, but I wouldn't necessarily call it like a Christian book. I think anyone could read it and just appreciate it as a biography of someone who was fighting Hitler, though his personal beliefs are the reason he was doing that. And finally, I'm going to introduce you to a fun series that I'm going to say high school because of some of the emojis used. This is not a graphic novel. These are the OMG Classics. And these take classic Shakespeare and other classics, because I know they have one for A Christmas Carol, and they turn them into texting conversations and location check-ins and emails and social media updates, and we laugh so hard. But because of some of the acronyms used, there are acronyms used in here that have the letter F in them, and other language. There's also the poop emoji, which is being used to symbolize a specific word. So again, you need to decide in your own household based on your own values if this would be funny for you or not. But we absolutely loved it, and I will recommend it for the high school age. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you got a few new book ideas. If you have some favorites to share in your house for the different age groups, go ahead and list them below. And that way we can kind of brainstorm some more together. And remember, if you want a printable list of even more favorites than I listed here, you can go and grab that on my website, a list of my favorite books by grade level, though many of these bonus graphic novels won't be on that list. So thanks for tuning in.